I drove to my own retirement party in my '09 Silverado because my son's wife was already there in the truck my brother had left me. She had been driving it for 6 weeks. I had not said a word. My brother Vernon left me that truck in his will, a 2021 Ford F-250, dark green crew cab, 22,000 miles on it. He died in October 14 months ago. Pancreatic cancer. Fast and cruel, the way that cancer always is. Vernon was 71. He had lived alone on his property outside Kerrville, Texas, for the last 9 years of his life after his divorce, and he had kept that truck in better condition than most men keep their marriages. He left it to me in writing, clear as a bell. His attorney, a man named Opene out of San Antonio, had the paperwork done before Vernon was even in the ground. My daughter-in-law took the keys off the hook in my mudroom 3 days after the funeral. I came home from Vernon's property, where I had been sorting through his tools with my nephew, and the truck was gone from my driveway. I found out the next morning that she had it. She told my son it made more sense for her to drive it since her Hyundai had been making a noise. She said it like that, like the truck was a spare umbrella, like it was something you just pick up when it is convenient. My son Seth is 38 years old. He did not say anything to her about it. He called me and explained the situation in the careful, exhausted voice of a man who has spent a decade smoothing things over. "Dad, she just needs it for a little while. You understand." I understood plenty. I drove to my retirement party in my old Silverado, 31 years working as a structural engineer for Bexar County. My colleagues had reserved the back room at a restaurant in downtown San Antonio. There were maybe 40 people there. My supervisor gave a speech. Someone had ordered a sheet cake with a blueprint printed on it in blue frosting. It was a good party. I shook a lot of hands. My brother Cormac was already at a table when I arrived. 70 years old, big hands, white hair cropped close to his head, a glass of iced tea in front of him. He had driven 3 hours from his place outside Fredericksburg. He looked at the parking lot when I walked in. He said, "You drove the Silverado." I said, "I drove the Silverado." He looked at me for a moment. He did not ask anything else right then. After dinner, when the speeches were done and people were saying their goodbyes, Cormac pulled me aside near the coat rack by the door. He said, "Come out to Fredericksburg this weekend, Saturday. Come for supper." I said, "Everything all right?" He said, "There are some things I want to show you. Things I should have shown you a while back. You needed to get to retirement first." He said it like that, like he had been waiting for a specific thing to happen before he could speak. I drove home that night, and I sat on my back porch for a long time. The night was warm for February. I could hear the neighbors' cattle down the road. I thought about Vernon's truck in my daughter-in-law's driveway, and I thought about my brother's face at the coat rack, and I thought about the word patience, about what patience actually costs a man over time. I want to tell you about my family. Before I tell you what happened in Fredericksburg. My name is Harold Sutcliffe. I am 63 years old. I was born and raised in Kerrville, Texas. My father worked at a hardware store most of his life. My mother taught 3rd grade. They were plain people. Honest people. They gave us what they had and never complained about what they did not have. There were 3 of us boys. Cormac was the oldest. Vernon was the middle. I was the youngest by 7 years. Cormac was always the steady one. Vernon was the charmer. I was the one who stayed closest to home, went to UT San Antonio on a partial scholarship, came back to Bexar County and built a life here. I have one son, Seth. His mother and I divorced when Seth was 11. It was not dramatic. We had grown into different people and we both knew it. She moved to Phoenix. Seth stayed with me. I raised him alone from 11 onward. It was not always easy. There were years when I was tired in a way I did not have the vocabulary for. But Seth and I were close. I thought we were close. I thought I knew who my son was. He married Patricia 9 years ago. She is 35 now. She works in marketing for a medical device company in Austin. She is smart and she is capable, and she is the kind of woman who always knows the price of everything and the value of almost nothing. She has never once in 9 years asked me a single question about my work, my life before Seth, or what I actually want. Every conversation she has with me is a transaction. She is pleasant, the same way a hotel lobby is pleasant. Comfortable, managed, impersonal. Seth loves her completely. He always has. He has the same look when he talks about her that my father had when he talked about the land he grew up on. Like she is something foundational, something he built himself around. I learned early not to say anything. I have a granddaughter named Wren. She is 6. She has Vernon's eyes and my mother's stubbornness, and she is the best thing in my life without any contest. When Vernon died and Patricia took his truck, I did not confront her. I thought about it. I played the conversation through in my head a dozen times. I know how it would have gone. She would have listened carefully, responded reasonably, agreed with everything I said in the moment, and then nothing would have changed. And Seth would have called me a week later with that smoothing voice telling me she meant well. So I said nothing. I drove my Silverado and I waited. I drove out to Fredericksburg on Saturday. Cormac's place is 22 acres of hill country. He raises a few cattle and keeps a garden that he is irrationally proud of. His house is a white limestone ranch house that he and his late wife Nora built together in the early 90s. Nora died of a stroke 4 years ago. He has lived there alone since then. He is not lonely in the way you might expect. He is the kind of man who is comfortable with his own company. He made chicken and dumplings for supper. We ate at the kitchen table. We talked about the retirement, about a hunting lease he was thinking of picking up, about Wren and what she had said at Christmas that had made both of us laugh until we could not breathe. Then he pushed back his chair. He said, "Come down to the shop with me." His shop is a metal building behind the house, maybe 40 by 60 feet. He built it himself over 2 summers. Inside there is a workbench running the full length of one wall, pegboard with tools hung in outline, a riding mower, a chest freezer, a gun safe. In the far corner there is a grey steel filing cabinet, 4 drawers, padlock on the top. I had seen it 100 times over the years. I had never thought about it. He went to the cabinet. He had the key on his keyring. He opened the second drawer. It was full of folders, organized and tabbed. He pulled out 2 of them and brought them to the workbench. He turned on the work lamp. He said, "Sit down, Harold." I pulled up a stool. He said, "I'm going to tell you some things that are going to be hard to hear. I want you to let me finish before you say anything." I said, "All right." He opened the first folder. He said, "This is about Seth." The first page was a bank statement. A joint account I had never seen. Not mine. The account holders were Seth Allen Sutcliffe and Patricia Ann Sutcliffe. Standard enough, but the transactions were not standard. There were transfers, regular, dated, from an account I did recognize. It was mine. I stared at the page. Cormac said, "I am going to walk you through it. Some of it you are going to recognize. Some of it you are going to recognize. Some of it you will not." He turned to the next page. The first transfer was from 2018. I had given Seth $11,000 that year for a down payment on their house in Austin. I remembered it clearly. He had come to me directly. He had said they were a little short, and he was embarrassed to ask. I had told him there was nothing to be embarrassed about. I had written the check. He was my son. That is what fathers do. But the transfer on the bank statement was $18,500. I looked at the number for a long moment. I said, "I gave him 11. Cormac said, "I know. He applied for a personal loan against your name in 2018 for $7,500. It was repaid in your name, not his. The interest came out of a line of credit tied to your home equity, which you are currently still carrying." I could feel something cold starting to move through me. He said, "There is more. Seth had asked me to co-sign on a commercial truck loan. He had been talking about starting a side business doing equipment transport. I had signed. The business had never materialized. He had told me the truck was sold and the loan resolved. I had believed him. Cormac turned to the page. The loan was not resolved. It had been refinanced twice. The current outstanding balance was $34,000. It was still in my name as primary co-signer. My credit report, which Cormac had pulled with the help of a financial advisor in Fredericksburg, showed it as an active liability. I put my hands flat on the workbench. I said, "Why is this in your files?" He's 7 years old, has started noticing things in 2019. Small things. The way Seth talked about money around Patricia. The way she would change the subject when your name came up. I had a conversation with Vernon in early 2020. Vernon had seen some of it too. We decided to watch. We hired a financial advisor I trusted to look quietly into the accounts we could access legally. It took us 3 years to build a full picture. He turned more pages. A credit card opened in my name in 2020. I had never applied for it. It had been used for $900 worth of purchases, furniture mostly, paid in minimum amounts for 2 years and then allowed to go to collections. A second loan in 2021, $15,000, again against my credit. A tax filing complication from 2020 where I had been listed as a dependent in a way that captured a refund I never received. Cormac's advisor estimated the total I could document. Total financial harm, approximately $89,000 over 6 years. I sat on that stool for a long time. The work lamp hummed above us. Outside, I could hear the wind moving through the cedar trees. I drank the coffee Cormac had brought from the house. I said, "Cormac, did Vernon know all of this before he died?" He said most of it, not the full number. He died before the advisor finished the complete accounting. I said, "Is that why he left the truck to me directly instead of through the family?" Cormac was quiet for a moment. He said, "Vernon left you that truck on purpose, Harold. He left it to you specifically, in writing, with Opene as the attorney, because he knew Patricia would find a way to redirect anything that came through the family loosely. He said to me 3 weeks before he went, that truck needs to go directly to Harold, not to Harold's household. To Harold." I looked at my coffee cup. I said, "He knew she would take it." Cormac said, "He suspected it. He thought it might be the thing that finally made you see clearly." I sat with that. My brother had planned his own legacy around protecting me from my son's wife. He had spent some of his last weeks thinking about how to leave me something she could not maneuver around, and she had taken it anyway, within 72 hours of his burial. I said, "There are 2 folders." Cormac nodded. He pushed the second folder across the workbench. The label on the tab was in Nora's handwriting. She had labeled it before her own death 4 years ago. She had written, "For Harold, when it is time." I opened it. The first page was a letter, handwritten 2 pages, in Nora's careful cursive. She had been a librarian. Her handwriting was precise and even. I read it. Then I set it down and looked at the ceiling for a while. Nora had written that in 2018. At Thanksgiving, she had overheard a phone call. Patricia had been on the back porch of the house in Fredericksburg, thinking she was alone. Nora had been in the mudroom getting her coat. The screen door was ajar. Patricia had been talking to someone, a woman, her sister, she thought, and she had said something that Nora had written down verbatim the moment she got to a private room. Patricia had said, "Harold doesn't even look at his accounts. He just signs whatever Seth asks him to. We put another few years before he retires and then we lock it down." Nora had written, "I debated for a long time whether to tell Harold directly or to tell Cormac. I decided to tell Cormac because Harold would have confronted Seth immediately and Patricia would have found a way to use that against him. She is very good at making other people look like the problem. Cormac and Vernon will know when the time is right. I trust them to protect my brother-in-law. I am putting this in writing so that if I am not here, the record is clear. Nora had been dead for 4 years. She had known for 6. I folded the letter carefully. I put it back in the folder. I put my hands on the workbench. I said, "Cormac, what are we going to do?" He said, "I have already started." He had not been idle. Over the previous 8 months, Cormac had consulted with a financial crimes attorney in San Antonio named Dale Odinetta. Dale specialized in elder financial abuse cases and civil fraud recovery. Texas law, Cormac explained, has specific statutes around financial elder abuse, including cases where the victim is not yet elderly in the traditional sense, but where the fraud is ongoing and systematic. Dale believed we had a strong civil case and potentially grounds for criminal referral to the Bexar County DA's office. He had also spoken with a forensic accountant named Lupe Castaneda in Austin, who had spent 8 weeks doing a full audit of every transaction she could access. The audit was 187 pages. He had also, in October, 2 months prior, spoken privately with my former supervisor at the county, a man named Bill Hatfield, who had known me for 28 years and who had quietly helped Cormac establish the timeline of when I had been working, what I had been earning, and what accounts were listed under my name without my authorization. He said, "We have everything we need. The question is how you want to proceed." I looked at him. I said, "Does Seth know that you know?" He said, "No. Patricia does not know. Seth does not. No. They believe this is all invisible." I said, "How long has Dale been ready?" He said, "Since November. I was waiting for you to retire. I did not want to drop this on you while you were still working. Still had a professional reputation to manage in the county system. Now you are out. Now you can fight this without anything being used against you at work." I drove home that night with both folders on the passenger seat. I did not sleep. I lay in bed and listened to the dark and thought about my son. 38 years old. The boy I had raised alone from 11 on. The boy I had taken to UT Longhorns games and taught to change his own oil and driven to the emergency room at 2 in the morning when he broke his arm in a flag football game at 24. I thought about all the times he had asked me for money and looked slightly to the left of my eyes when he did it. I had noticed that look. I had told myself it was just embarrassment, the natural discomfort of a man asking his father for help. It was not embarrassment. I called Cormac in the morning and I said, "I am in. Tell Dale to move." The plan had 4 steps. The first step was Dale filing a formal complaint with the Bexar County DA's Financial Crimes Unit in early March. He simultaneously prepared a civil suit for $89,000 in documented damages, plus additional punitive damages. A detective named Rosa Ibarra, who had been handling financial fraud cases for 11 years, opened an active investigation and began quietly pulling bank records under subpoena. Seth and Patricia were not contacted. They did not know the clock had started. The second step was Lupe's full audit being delivered to Detective Ibarra's office in April. 187 pages. Every transaction, every account, every loan, every fraudulent filing. Lupe had also identified 2 additional fraudulent accounts we had not caught on our own. A store credit account at a home furnishing chain opened in my name in 2022, and a cell phone financing account from 2021 that had a $2,100 outstanding balance. Total revised damage figure, $94,000 plus applicable interest. The third step was the one that cost me sleep for 2 straight weeks. Dale had advised me that Seth needed to be told privately before any of it became public record. Not because Seth deserved warning, because Ren deserved a father who had been told the truth before he read it in a legal filing. Dale said, "You owe your son a private conversation before his wife's attorney gets involved. You do not owe Patricia anything, but your granddaughter deserves a version of her father, who had the chance to respond like a man before the law made that impossible." I drove to Austin on a Wednesday morning in late April. Seth was at work. I texted him and asked him to meet me for lunch. He came to the diner I had chosen, a place we had been together before, near his office. He was relaxed when he walked in. He thought it was a retirement lunch, a father-son thing. I had the folder on the table when he sat down. He looked at it. He looked at me. I said, "I need you to look at this and tell me what you know." He went through it page by page. I watched his face. He did not look surprised, the way an innocent man looks, surprised. He looked the way a man looks when he has been waiting to be caught and the moment has finally arrived. He went pale. He closed the folder. He set it on the table. He could not look at me. He said, "Dad," I said, "tell me how much you knew." He said, "I knew about the house loan. I knew about the truck. I didn't know about some of the others. I swear I didn't know all of it." I said, "Some is enough." "Some means you knew." He put his face in his hands. I said, "Seth, look at me." He looked at me. I said, "I am not going to pretend I am not destroyed right now. I am. You are my son. I built everything around being your father. But what your wife has been doing to me and what you allowed, this is not something I can look away from. The DA's office is already involved. Dale Urdaneta has already filed. This is past the point where it can be quietly corrected." He said, "Does Patricia know?" I said, "Not yet." "She is about to." He said, "Dad Wren," I said, "I know. That is the only reason I am sitting here instead of letting you read about this in a certified letter. I am telling you now because of your daughter. Not for your sake, for hers." He started crying in that diner. I sat across from him and I let him. I drank my coffee and I looked out the window at the parking lot and I let my son cry. I did not feel satisfaction. I want to be honest about that. I felt grief. A specific, terrible grief. The kind that comes when you finally see something clearly that you have been trying not to see for years. After a while, I said, "You have two choices. You can cooperate fully with the investigation and work with Dale to make this right. Or you can not cooperate and let it proceed the way these things proceed when no one cooperates. Either way, it moves forward. The only variable is whether you choose to be a man about it." He wiped his face. He said, "I'll cooperate." I said, "Then call your wife before she hears it from her attorney." The fourth step happened 6 weeks later. It was a Sunday, early June. Seth had arranged a Father's Day dinner early because Wren had a birthday party the following weekend. We were at my house. Cormac had driven up from Fredericksburg. Dale was not present, but he had been in communication with me that morning. Seth's wife arrived with Wren and a pan of lasagna she had made. She was pleasant the way she always was. She organized the kitchen, got Wren settled with her coloring books, poured herself a glass of sweet tea. She had no idea what Seth had done in the weeks since our diner conversation. He had cooperated fully. He had provided bank records, signed statements, confirmed the timeline. He had moved out of the house 2 weeks before and was staying with a friend from work. He had told her only that they needed space. He had not told her why. She did not know that Wren had been quietly drawing a horse at the kitchen table while Dale's process server was 20 minutes away. The process server arrived at 4:15. She was sitting at my kitchen table when the knock came at the door. I opened it. The server introduced himself. He asked for Patricia by full name. She came to the door. She was still holding her glass of sweet tea. He handed her the envelope. She looked at it. She looked at me. She said, "Harold, what is this?" I said, "Those are the documents." She opened the envelope carefully, the way she did everything, controlled and managed. She read the first page, then the second. I watched the color in her face change. Seth was standing in the doorway to the kitchen. He was not looking at her. He was looking at Wren, who was still coloring, unbothered. Patricia said, "Seth." He did not answer. She said, "Seth, did you know about this?" He said, "Yes." She said, "You talked to them?" He said, "Yes, Patricia, I talked to them." He said, "Yes, Patricia, I talked to them." She turned to me. Something had shifted in her face. The pleasantness was still there at the edges, the muscle memory of it, but the structure underneath had changed. She said, "Harold, I think this has been a misunderstanding. Some of these accounts, there are explanations." I said, "That is what the process is for. The DA's office will hear the explanations. Dale Ordinator will hear the explanations. You can have your attorney present." She said, "This is family." I looked at her for a long moment. I said, "You have been correct about that from the beginning. This is family, and you treated family like a bank account you did not have to pay back." She looked at Seth one more time. He would not meet her eyes. Cormac had come to stand beside me in the hallway. He was quiet. He was just there. Like he had been, I realized, the whole time. Always just there, steady, saying nothing until the right moment. She gathered her purse. She said something to Ren about being right back. She walked out the front door. She sat in her car in my driveway for 20 minutes. Then she drove away. The legal process took nearly a year. She and her attorney fought several of the counts, but the forensic audit held. In February, she accepted a civil settlement of $94,000 in full. The funds came from the liquidation of joint accounts and a portion of the Austin house equity in the divorce proceedings Seth had filed in October. Her criminal referral was reduced by the DA to a deferred prosecution agreement, which means she avoids a conviction record if she completes restitution and community service over 3 years. Her attorney had argued mitigating factors. Dale had argued the documented, deliberate nature of a 6-year scheme. The agreement landed somewhere in the middle. Seth and I are rebuilding. I want to be honest that it is slow and it is not guaranteed. There are days when I pick Ren up from school and I look at my son's face and I feel the thing I cannot name yet. Not grief, not anger, something in between that does not have a clean word. He made his choices for a long time before he chose correctly. That has weight. It does not disappear because he cooperated. But he is my son. He is Ren's father. And I watched him, in the months since, be a better father than he had been before any of this happened, as if the fall had clarified something in him. I am watching that. I am giving it time. Vernon's truck is in my driveway. I got it back in December, part of the asset settlement. It still has 24,000 miles on it. Vernon kept it immaculate. Some mornings I walk out to the driveway just to look at it. It is a green I associate with my brother, with hill country cedar after rain, with something that holds. Cormac and I have Sunday supper by phone now, since the drive is long and his eyes are getting worse. He talks about his garden. I talk about Rinian. We do not talk about Patricia much. There is not much left to say. Nora had known. She had sat in that mudroom with her coat half on, and she had listened, and she had gone straight to her room and written down what she heard. And she had trusted the right people to act at the right time. She had died 4 years before any of this resolved. She never saw it through. I think about her sometimes. I think about what it cost her to know something that large, and say nothing to me directly. I think she loved me the way families sometimes loves each other from the side, protecting without being seen, keeping records instead of starting fires. Some people spend their whole lives protecting the people they love quietly. You only find out after. If you have ever felt like someone in your family was watching you be used and staying silent, and you have never understood why they said nothing, drop one word in the comments. Just one. Tell me what you thought the silence meant. I read everyone. If this story reached you, hit the like button. Share it with someone who has been looking the other way for too long. Subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. I have thought a lot about what it actually takes to betray someone who trusts you completely. It does not happen all at once. It happens in increments. A small thing here, a quiet redirection there, a signature obtained when the other person is distracted or tired or just too willing to believe that the people they love would not do that to them. Patricia did not take $94,000 from me in one moment. She took it over 6 years, piece by piece, in amounts small enough that no single one of them would have made me stop and say, "Wait, That is the intelligence of it, and that intelligence I have come to understand is not something to admire. It is something to recognize for exactly what it is, a choice made repeatedly with clear eyes over a long time. She knew what she was doing every single time. Seth knew some of it. That is the part I still sit with most. Not Patricia, who was never fully mine to lose. Seth, my son, the boy I raised. He knew about the house loan. He knew about the truck loan. He let me sign documents, and he looked slightly left to my eyes when I handed them back. I had seen that look, and I had chosen to believe it meant embarrassment. It is hard to say what it cost me to understand that I had not been wrong about what I saw. I had only been wrong about what it meant. Here is what I believe about how things work between people. When you consistently take from someone who would give you anything freely if you just asked, you are not just stealing money. You are stealing the version of yourself that person believed in. Patricia did not just take $94,000. She took the years in which I could have known clearly who my son was, and made different choices about how close I let him get to my finances, my trust, my life. That cannot be repaid. The civil settlement covered the numbers. It did not cover that. What Cormac did and what Nora did before him is the thing I keep returning to. Nora sat in a mudroom in 2018 with her coat half on, and she heard something and she wrote it down. She did not panic. She did not call me and blow the whole thing open in a way that Patricia could have managed and redirected. She wrote it down, told Cormac, and trusted that the right people would act at the right time. She died 4 years before she ever saw it resolved. She never got to know that it worked. That kind of steadiness, the willingness to protect someone quietly without any guarantee you will be there to see them protected, is the kind of thing I do not have a word for that feels large enough. Vernon left me that truck knowing Patricia might take it. He structured his own will around the possibility. He spent some of his last weeks thinking about how to leave me something she could not redirect. He did not have the strength left to fight her himself, so he built a wall in his paperwork instead. That truck is in my driveway now. Every time I look at it, I think about what it means to love someone with the intelligence to protect them not just with feeling, but with forethought. I am 63 years old. I am rebuilding something with my son that may or may not hold. I do not know yet. What I know is that I went a long time seeing clearly and choosing not to. That is on me as much as it is on anyone. The next part of my life I intend to see things for what they are, name them for what they are, and trust the people who have already shown me over years that they will carry the hard things quietly when they have to. That is enough to build on. It has to be.